She mocked the janitor in front of everyone. Sure, he was nothing. What she didn't know was that he worked for the FBI and was wearing a wire. The day began like most in downtown Boston. Sticky heat rising from the streets, air conditioners humming, and people rushing with coffee cups. No time to waste. Vanessa Reed Morgan stepped out of her lift in front of the glass tower housing Blackwell and Hayes LLP, one of the most feared law firms in Massachusetts. Her heels clicked on the marble floor as she entered the lobby, phone against her ear, shouting about a late court filing. She wore a cream-colored suit sharp enough to cut paper, sunglasses still on, her voice louder than necessary. Just inside the lobby near the elevators, a janitor was cleaning up a spilled coffee. He moved slowly, carefully back and forth over the mess, like it was his only job for the day. Vanessa saw him but looked through him. She stopped just before the wet floor sign and groaned. "Oh, seriously?" The janitor kept mopping without looking up. Vanessa took off her glasses. "Excuse me," she said, waving her hand like hailing a taxi from the 90s. "You're blocking the elevator." Still no response. He just adjusted the mop head, silent. She raised her voice, catching the attention of a security guard nearby. "Do you speak English?" The man finally looked up. Calm eyes, maybe early 50s, thin, dark skin. Work shirt with a faded name tag reading M. Jackson. "Just finishing up here, ma'am," he said quietly. "Well, maybe you should mop before people show up for actual work. This isn't a bus station." He didn't react. No frown. No eye roll. Just looked at her like she was a passing cloud. That bothered her more than any comeback would have. She wasn't done. "Look," Vanessa continued, waving one hand while holding her phone. "I don't know where you worked before, but in this building, people expect things to be clean before 8 a.m. It's about standards. Maybe ask someone to train you if you're not sure what that looks like." He gave a small nod. "Understood." "Good." She stepped around him and jabbed the elevator button, sighing like the whole world had failed her. Behind her, the janitor went back to mopping, moving even slower now, each stroke measured. The doors opened, and Vanessa walked in without another word. From the front desk, the security guard, a guy in his 30s with tattoos peeking from under his sleeves, watched everything and shook his head slightly. He knew the janitor, friendly guy, always early, never talked much, but cleaned thoroughly and left no mess. The elevator doors closed. Inside, Vanessa was already calling someone new. "You wouldn't believe the incompetence I just dealt with," she said, voice echoing through the metal box. Upstairs on the 23rd floor, paralegals and associates were trickling in. Vanessa rushed to her glass-walled office, dropped her bag, and started giving orders before her assistant had even put down her coat. Meanwhile, in the lobby, Marcus Jackson finished mopping, wheeled the yellow bucket aside, and pulled a phone from his back pocket. He typed a short note. Subject made unprovoked verbal contact at 7:48 a.m. Dismissive tone. Racially coded language. Maintained composure. He hit save and put the phone away. Then he walked toward the staff elevator in the back, same as he did every morning. But what Vanessa didn't know was that she just walked right into the middle of a federal investigation, and Marcus wasn't there to clean floors. Marcus Jackson had learned long ago that people show who they really are when they think no one important is watching. It didn't bother him anymore. Not like it used to. He'd stopped wasting energy on anger. These days, he paid attention instead. Quietly, carefully, the staff elevator moved slowly, creaking as it went from the lobby to the third basement level of the building, a place tenants never visited. Marcus stepped out, past the boiler room, and entered a locked janitorial supply room. He turned on the overhead light and closed the heavy door. Then he pulled off the work shirt. Underneath was a dark gray t-shirt with a thin microphone taped just below his collarbone. He took out a small recorder from his pocket, checked the time, and transferred the audio file precisely to a hidden laptop tucked inside an old cardboard box labeled Bleach. He clicked play. Her voice was crystal clear, arrogant, dismissive, careless. It wasn't the first recording like that, and probably wouldn't be the last. The truth was, Marcus hadn't cleaned a real floor in nearly a year. He was a federal prosecutor from the Chicago office, temporarily assigned to a joint task force investigating discriminatory hiring and promotion practices across powerful law firms in New England and New York. They'd started looking at Blackwell and Hayes after two former paralegals, both black women, filed separate complaints a year apart, each quietly dismissed by HR. The complaints alone weren't enough for action, not in a firm that big with lawyers that connected. But a pattern was forming, and the FBI wanted a closer look. That's where Marcus came in. He'd grown up in Detroit. His mother cleaned offices. His father drove buses. He knew what it meant when people looked through you like you weren't there. He remembered teachers mispronouncing his name every year, and classmates laughing like it was funny. But he wasn't bitter. He'd made it out, made it through law school, made it into the U.S. Attorney's office. And when the chance came to go undercover for a long-term discrimination investigation, he didn't hesitate. He understood the assignment in a way others couldn't. Over the past 6 months, he'd rotated through 6 different buildings posing as janitorial staff. No one ever asked who he really was. No one looked past the uniform. Blackwell and Hayes had been flagged early. Quiet settlements, high turnover, promotion bottlenecks, and something worse. An air of elitism that was hard to prove but easy to feel. Marcus's job wasn't to collect feelings, though. It was to gather proof. Every morning he clocked in before 6, reviewed his notes from the day before, then went upstairs with a mop and bucket like any other janitor. But every mop handle was hollow, hiding a recording device. Every trash bag had tiny cameras embedded near the seal. And every harmless question he asked, "What time's the partner meeting? Working late again tonight?" was intentional. He was building a map, a trail of names, conversations, comments made casually in elevators and break rooms. Things said when people thought they were safe. And Vanessa? She was just another name on the list until today. Today she crossed the line in public, in front of witnesses, on a building camera. That made her more than a name. She became a target. Marcus closed the laptop, packed it away, and zipped up his duffel bag. He didn't hate Vanessa. In fact, hate rarely entered the picture. What he felt was disappointment at how easy it still was to be ignored, talked down to, dismissed. And how many people like Vanessa existed in rooms that shaped laws and influenced decisions affecting families who looked like his own. He paused at the door, ran a hand over his shaved head, and let out a slow breath. Then he put the janitor's shirt back on, buttoned it all the way up, and went back to work like nothing happened. But above the floor he just left, Vanessa was already getting comfortable. Too comfortable. And that meant Marcus had more work to do. Undercover Vanessa Reed Morgan wasn't one to pause. She moved through her days like she was racing an invisible clock. Always talking fast, always ahead of everyone else. In her office, corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, leather chair that cost more than some used cars. She commanded the room without raising her voice. Clients loved her because she never quit. Colleagues respected her because she won. But there was another reason people didn't challenge Vanessa. And it wasn't just her record. It was her mouth. She had a talent for cutting remarks that sounded like compliments until they landed. She called it straight talk. Her assistant called it something else, but never out loud. That morning, after the incident in the lobby, Vanessa barely remembered it happened. To her, it was just another frustrating moment in a long list of things beneath her attention. She was already back to normal. slamming her phone on the desk, demanding depositions, asking who approved a motion without her name on it. "Brittany," she called through the glass wall. "Why are there 3 typos in the brief from yesterday?" Brittany, her assistant, walked in, face tight. "I didn't edit that one. You gave it to Justin." Vanessa blinked. "Then why didn't you double-check his work? You know he's not ready for that level of detail." Brittany wanted to say she wasn't a babysitter. Instead, she nodded once and backed out. Vanessa shook her head, muttering, "One job. That's all they have. One." It wasn't the first time someone heard that phrase from her. By noon, Vanessa had already taken 3 client calls and shouted down one junior partner who dared challenge her timeline. She ate half a salad at her desk and threw the rest away when she didn't like the dressing. Then she walked into the partner's lounge. The room was quiet, just 2 others inside. Richard Everett, a mid-50s tax law expert with a stiff tie and stiff personality, and Monica Olson, corporate mergers and acquisitions, sharp but observant. Vanessa poured coffee, then looked out the window. "You see the new janitor? The one downstairs." Richard didn't answer. Monica raised an eyebrow. "He moves like he's being paid by the hour to think," Vanessa said, laughing. "Spilled coffee took 10 minutes to clean. I was late to my elevator." Monica stirred her tea slowly. "Maybe he's just thorough." Vanessa waved a hand. "It's not that. There's just this vibe, you know? Like he's watching everyone. Doesn't say much. Probably doesn't understand half of what's happening around him." Richard finally looked up. "Vanessa? What? I didn't say anything wrong. I'm just saying some people don't belong in certain environments. That's not racist. That's common sense." Monica put her cup down. "Actually, it is kind of racist. Just saying." Vanessa laughed. "Oh, come on. You know me. I don't have a racist bone in my body. I just believe in standards. Everyone should know their lane." Monica didn't respond. Richard went back to his spreadsheet. The tension hung in the air for a moment before Vanessa left the room, coffee in hand, like nothing happened. In her mind, the problem wasn't what she said. It was how easily people took offense these days. She grew up in Hartford, went to Boston University on a scholarship, fought her way through law school surrounded by men who doubted her at every turn. She earned her place. Why shouldn't she hold others to the same standard? What Vanessa couldn't see was how her version of standards always bent in her favor, always gave the benefit of the doubt to people who looked and sounded like her. And she especially didn't notice when someone was watching. But Marcus hadn't missed a word. And now he had more than enough to trace her patterns back further than she ever expected. Downstairs, back in the supply room behind the boiler tanks and chemical barrels, Marcus sat quietly on a folding chair, earbuds in, listening to the raw audio from the partner lounge. The microphone he'd planted in the break room wall outlet 3 days ago had caught everything. Vanessa's laughter, her comments, the awkward silence that followed. The device worked better than expected, capturing every tone, every little pause. The kind that told him exactly how people really felt. He labeled the file and backed it up to an encrypted flash drive before sending a copy to the FBI case lead in Chicago. He didn't add commentary. The audio spoke for itself. It always did. He scrolled through his notes. Vanessa was far from the only person in that firm to make suspicious remarks or act dismissively. But she'd become the most careless and the most vocal. There were signs of deeper rot, too. Promotion charts that showed strange patterns, whispers from paralegals about odd questions asked in interviews, anonymous emails sent to HR that disappeared into silence. Still, until today, Vanessa had been noise. Now she was a thread, and pulling that thread meant looking closer. That afternoon, Marcus switched buildings. There were 3 janitorial staff across the Blackwell and Hayes Tower, each assigned to different floor groups. They didn't usually cross paths, But today Marcus volunteered to fill in on the 23rd floor, while another worker handled some light repairs. It was subtle. He didn't want to alarm anyone. He just needed access. At 3:20 p.m., he pushed the cart into the executive wing with his head down and his earpiece running. Nobody paid him any mind. Just another pair of gloves and a mop bucket. He cleaned quietly outside Vanessa's office while she was on another call, this time about a pending settlement. She was speaking fast as usual. "I don't care what he says. I want it closed by Friday. If the client wants to stall, we remind him who writes the checks. If he's got a problem with that, he can take his business to one of those boutique firms in Providence." A pause, then laughter. "Don't worry, they won't. People love to pretend they have options." Marcus moved slowly, wiping the same spot on the glass partition for 3 minutes straight. At one point, Vanessa looked up and saw him through the window. He gave a small wave. She didn't return it. She turned back to her call and said, "These people forget they work for us, not with us." That was enough. He walked away before she noticed him listening. Later that evening, once most of the office had cleared out, Marcus returned to the break room. He reached under one of the chairs near the table and retrieved the second microphone he'd placed earlier that week. He scrolled through the recordings. Vanessa again, this time talking to Justin, a junior associate. "You want to make partner here?" she'd asked. "Here's the secret. Talk like them, dress like them, work harder than them. But don't act like you came here to change anything. They don't want new energy. They want mirrors." Justin had laughed, nervous, unsure. "I'm just trying to stay above water." "Well," Vanessa said, "don't swim too far from shore. People drown when they forget they're not built for the deep end." The metaphors were tired. The message wasn't. Marcus closed his notebook, made a short voice memo, and stored it on the backup drive. At this point, the case was moving quietly, strategically. Evidence was mounting, and Vanessa was leading the charge without even realizing it. But there was still one piece missing, and Marcus knew it wouldn't take long before she gave it to him herself. Friday morning came with tension in the air, though no one said it out loud. There was no memo, no email, no meeting on the calendar, just a strange edge to everything. Marcus felt at the moment he stepped inside the lobby. People were walking a little faster. Phones were held a little tighter. Conversations were shorter. Vanessa didn't notice any of it. She breezed in at 8 a.m., sunglasses on despite the dim light inside, phone already at her ear. By 8:13, she was chewing out a paralegal for printing the wrong draft of a deposition. "Are we hiring high schoolers now?" she said loudly in the hallway, her voice echoing off the glass walls. The paralegal, a quiet woman named Rachel, murmured an apology, eyes on the floor. Vanessa snorted and kept walking. Marcus was nearby, wiping down the water cooler. Rachel passed him on her way to the copy room. She didn't say anything, but her face said enough. By noon, Vanessa was in a mood. A client had pulled out of an upcoming negotiation and blamed her for being too aggressive. She blamed Justin again. They sat in her office with the blinds half drawn. Marcus stood 2 doors down, pretending to fix a slow-leaking sink in the kitchenette. "You told them we'd pursue maximum damages, right?" she snapped. Justin fumbled. "I repeated what you said in the call. Then why do I get an email from the client saying he feels threatened by the language used? You think that's me? They don't talk to me like that. You must have softened it or worse, messed it up entirely." "I didn't," Justin said. "I read your language verbatim." Vanessa stood up. "Then maybe your face said something different. Maybe they saw you and thought, 'Oh, this guy's not the shark I expected.'" Justin blinked. "Excuse me? Don't play sensitive," Vanessa said, waving a hand. "You know how this works. You've got to project something. Make people take you seriously. Right now you give grad school intern, not future partner. There was a pause, then she added, and if you're going to stay here, you need to stop playing the I'm different card. It doesn't matter where you're from or what group you think you represent. Just do the work. That's how we get respect. Not by pushing diversity quotas or trying to impress the DI committee. Outside, Marcus closed the wrench set slowly and stood still for a moment. That was it. That was the moment. He didn't need to dig deeper. She'd volunteered the truth herself, on tape, in her office, without a trace of hesitation. Later that day, Marcus made one final entry in his log. He listed the time, date, location, keywords used, and internal relevance to the case. The file was marked escalation trigger. At 3:42 p.m., he stepped outside the building and made a short call to his FBI contact. "We're ready to move," he said. No dramatic arrests. No press conferences. That wasn't how this worked. Instead, a quiet internal audit request was submitted to the firm's board. A letter marked time-sensitive personnel ethics review. It arrived Monday morning. The same day, 2 federal attorneys entered the building posing as potential clients. One sat with a partner for a scheduled tour. The other requested a private discussion with the head of HR. By midweek, rumors swirled like smoke in a sealed room. HR sent a firm-wide email reminding staff that all internal communications might be subject to review. A second message followed. If you believe you've experienced or witnessed workplace misconduct, we encourage you to come forward. Some did. Others didn't need to. The tapes were doing the talking. And Vanessa? She still didn't see it coming. But the silence growing around her wasn't just awkward. It was calculated. And soon she'd feel just how cold that kind of silence could get. The shift was subtle at first. Vanessa noticed it during the Tuesday morning partner meeting. People who usually greeted her with nods or half smiles avoided her gaze. Richard, who always sat to her left, chose a seat farther down. Monica kept her responses clipped, her tone neutral. Even Brittany, her assistant, had grown quieter. She delivered messages without lingering, answered only what was asked, and no longer pretended to laugh at Vanessa's sarcasm. Vanessa blamed it on stress. There had been a lot of pressure lately. People were overworked. Maybe someone leaked rumors about her client loss. Or maybe HR was tightening up again. Those emails about misconduct and anonymous tips were probably spooking everyone. She wasn't worried, but she should have been, because by Wednesday, things began to move faster. The firm's managing partner, Thomas Greaves, called a sudden mandatory meeting for all senior staff. That never happened without notice. Vanessa was irritated before she even walked in. The conference room was full. Everyone looked restless. Thomas stood at the head of the table, a thick folder in front of him. "This won't take long," he said, voice tight. "We've received a formal notice of investigation from the Federal Bureau of Investigation regarding internal conduct, promotion practices, and discriminatory behavior. This comes with verified audio evidence recorded by an embedded federal official." Murmurs spread like a wave. Vanessa looked up, confused. She hadn't heard about any investigation. She looked around the room for answers, but most people weren't looking back. "We are cooperating fully," Thomas continued. "That includes sharing all relevant communications, reviewing partnership pathways, and conducting individual interviews. The FBI has identified key individuals of interest. They've already spoken with our compliance team. Some of you will be contacted directly." That word, individuals of interest, landed like glass shattering. Vanessa felt heat rise behind her ears. "Do we know who they are?" someone asked. Thomas didn't answer that. Instead, he opened the folder and laid down the first document, A printed transcript of a conversation. The heading read, Partner Lounge Audio File 027. Vanessa's stomach turned. She didn't have to read it to recognize her own words. She stood. I'd like to speak with you privately. Thomas raised an eyebrow. You'll have your chance during the official interview. Thomas, if this is about that janitor. He held up a hand. It's not about a janitor. It's about all of them. And how they're treated. And how you treat people who you think can't affect your career. She froze. The room didn't move. Someone whispered, she's on it. Vanessa grabbed her bag and walked out, her heels clacking loud down the hallway. That sound that once commanded respect now sounded like panic. Meanwhile, down on sublevel 3, Marcus stood in a different uniform. No mop, no gloves, no badge that said M. Jackson. He wore a charcoal gray blazer, pressed slacks, and carried a simple leather case with his credentials tucked inside. When he entered the elevator, security didn't stop him. At 2:05 p.m., he walked into the firm's HR office and was met by 2 senior attorneys and a compliance officer. No drama, no grand reveal. He simply opened the folder, handed over the final report, and said, "Everything you need is inside." When asked to confirm his identity, he gave his full name and title. Marcus R. Wilson, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Civil Rights Division. Back upstairs, Vanessa sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen without blinking. She hadn't received an interview time yet, but it didn't matter. She could feel the walls closing in. Her name was in the transcript, her voice on the recordings, her straight talk. Now part of an official complaint from 2 current associates and 1 intern who had been in the break room months ago, silently taking notes. What she thought were harmless comments were now listed under patterned bias and verbal harassment. No one had come to remove her yet, but no one defended her either. And as Vanessa sat in her glass office surrounded by silence, the realization settled in. Respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned. And once lost, it didn't come back easily. A week later, Vanessa was gone. No official statement. No firm-wide announcement. Her name simply vanished from the company directory. The plaque outside her office disappeared. Her assistant, Brittany, quietly boxed up the desk and left the items at security for someone to collect. Some people pretended to be surprised. Most weren't. Whispers filled the office. She got pushed out. No severance. They found more than just the tapes. There were emails, but no one said anything loud. It was like talking about a ghost. Someone who used to exist, now erased. Up on the 23rd floor, Justin sat at a new desk. His voice carried a little more weight now. He didn't change who he was, but people listened differently. Monica took over most of Vanessa's client list. Richard started arriving earlier, more attentive. Small shifts, real ones. The culture didn't flip overnight, but something cracked open. Downstairs, in a side conference room rented by the FBI, a group of employees gave testimony behind closed doors. Marcus sat with them, not as a janitor, not even as the lead investigator, but as someone present to listen, to show face, to remind them that what they said mattered. One of the paralegals, Rachel, spoke for the first time in front of a legal official. She'd been silent for years. Her voice trembled at first, but it steadied as she explained the way things were. How often comments were disguised as jokes, how bias was baked into the silence that followed them. Marcus didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. By the end of the meeting, she looked relieved. Not happy, but lighter. When it was all over, Marcus packed his files and prepared to head back to Chicago. Outside the building, on a shaded bench near the corner of Boylston and Arlington, he sat for a moment, watching people pass, businessmen, bike messengers, a teenage girl arguing with her mom over a phone call, a delivery guy pushing a cart of food. He blended in again, like always. A young man from the building, someone from accounting, walked past, paused, then turned. "Hey," he said. "You work down in janitorial, right?" Marcus looked up calm. "I did. You still with the firm?" "No. Just finished what I came to do." The man hesitated. "You were always cool to me. Just wanted to say that. I didn't realize you were, you know." Marcus smiled. "That's the point." They shook hands. It was quick. No drama. Just a gesture between two people who'd shared the same space, even if only for a while. Later that day, Marcus gave a private talk at Harvard Law School. Not a big speech. No cameras. Just a room full of students and a few faculty. He told them the story. Not with names or recordings, but with meaning. "People will tell you that power looks a certain way," he said. "That it dresses a certain way, speaks a certain way, that it only listens to itself. But the truth is, power's not about volume or position. It's about what you do when no one thinks you're watching. It's how you treat the person cleaning your office, not the one signing your check." He paused, let it sit. "And one more thing," he added. "Never assume the person you look down on doesn't have the power to change your life." The students clapped, not like they were watching a show, but like they understood something real. That night, Marcus flew home. He didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone what he'd done. He went back to work, picked up another case. Same mission, different faces. But he never forgot Vanessa Reed Morgan. Not because she was cruel, but because she was ordinary. The kind of person the system protects until someone asks the right questions. And maybe that's the real lesson. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a bang. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through someone you thought was invisible. 12 months passed, and life at Blackwell and Hayes LLP had changed, but not in the way anyone had expected. The firm still stood, still boasted its long client list, still operated from the same gleaming tower in Boston. But the temperature inside had shifted. People listened more. Some looked inward. A few left entirely. And Vanessa? She disappeared from the legal world as quickly as her name had been removed from the firm's website. No press, no LinkedIn update, no quiet rebranding on a smaller firm's page. It was as if she'd been erased, not by force, but by consequence. Those close to her said she'd gone back to Hartford, where her family still owned property. One former colleague claimed she'd taken up photography. Another said she was working on a book. No one really knew, and no one pushed to find out. What mattered more was the space she left behind and what filled it. Inside the firm, DI trainings became more than lip service. Hiring committees expanded. HR installed a third-party hotline for anonymous concerns. Justin, now a senior associate, had helped draft the new mentoring protocol. One that focused on merit without erasing identity. It was slow progress, but it was real. Meanwhile, Marcus Wilson had taken on 3 more investigations since Blackwell and Hayes. One involved a medical board in Albany. Another focused on a public university in Connecticut. The third, still in early stages, hinted at something far bigger. National, even systemic. But in the middle of all of that, he made time for something else. At Roxbury High School, just 15 minutes from the firm that once ignored him, Marcus visited a class of 11th graders once a month to talk about law. Not theory, not case law, just life. In March, one of the students, a quiet kid named Kevin, raised his hand. "Were you scared?" he asked. "When you were there pretending to be someone else?" Marcus paused. "I wasn't scared," he said. "I was tired. Tired of watching people get dismissed before they opened their mouths. Tired of seeing the same people win by default. So I stopped hoping someone else would say something, and I did it myself." Kevin nodded. "Did it work?" Marcus smiled. "Depends what you mean. Did we fix everything? No. But we started something. And sometimes that's the part people forget. You don't always have to finish the fight. You just have to refuse to sit down. That line stuck with the students. One of them wrote it on a poster during Black History Month. Another quoted it in her college application essay. Back in his Chicago office, Marcus kept the old janitor's uniform in a plastic bag in the back of his closet. Not as a trophy, not even as a reminder, but as proof. Proof that the world still judged people by the surface. Proof that character still mattered. And proof that sometimes the most powerful person in the room was the one no one saw coming. He didn't tell people about the case anymore, not in detail. The transcripts were sealed, the files closed. But every time he stepped into a new room, every time someone looked at him and underestimated him, he remembered Vanessa. He remembered how quickly people revealed who they really were when they thought it didn't matter. And that's what stuck with him the most. Not the headlines, not the case files, but the lesson. How easily people forget that respect isn't earned through job titles or law degrees. It's earned in silence, in service, and in how you treat those you think have nothing to offer you. If this story moved you, made you pause, or reminded you of someone you know, take a moment to think about the spaces you walk through every day. Who do you overlook? Who do you talk over? And who might be watching, not with anger, but with purpose?